They had a Cinderella run to the postseason last year.
And then turned into a pumpkin.
They did turn into a pumpkin really quick, but they got there. They snatched victory being the playoffs, from the jaws of defeat, in this case, the Philadelphia Flyers. But it was hard to see how the Washington Capitals could do it again if they didn't make some significant changes. So, June 27th, they said, how about we start the significant changes train? Everything, as Leaf fans, we don't know what this is like, everything was on the table. And it started with Pierre-Luc Dubois and the remaining 7 years of his contract coming in. Then Andrew Mangiapane was acquired a couple of days later for a second-round pick in 2025. Then, while Logan Thompson was signing autographs for Vegas Golden Knights fans at the draft, he was traded for a couple of third-round picks in 2024 and 2025. Fans were crying. It was crazy. And then a couple of days after that, the Ottawa Senators gave up what we thought was one of their best defensemen, one of the guys they had pinned their future on, Jake Chychrun, for Nick Jensen in a third-round pick. And, of course, they outbid the Toronto Maple Leafs for Matt Roy. Signed a 6-year, $5.75 million deal. That's per year, by the way. All of a sudden, guys, the Caps look like they're something.
They're taking a lot of bets. They're taking a lot of guys who have shown that they can be very good, maybe even brilliant, and their stock has plummeted.
Yeah,
but they're looking to give them an opportunity. Pierre-Luc Dubois is the easiest name to pick out of that. Dude, Andrew Mangiapane, when we were talking about the Olympics before COVID ruined that, we were talking about him as a potential fit for that team, as a guy who can score goals and be a penalty killer. Jacob Chychrun, I'm not sure has played a Stanley Cup playoff game, so you could sort of throw him into that equation to some extent. Even a guy like Taylor Radish, like Dylan Strome, they took a chance on him, a really highly touted guy who just couldn't stick anywhere. And then they turned him into their highest scorer last year. Sonny Milano was a guy who
couldn't find a contract.
So they're doing kind of what they've done to success over the past few years, except on frigging steroids. And I think their goaltending tandem is at least going to break even with last year. There's a lot to like here. It's just there's such a clump in the middle of the Metro division that you could argue is teams 1 through 8.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly how you got to look at it with these teams. They're so close. Like, you can really go whichever way with 3, 4, and 5, and 6 really too. But for me, like, the big story with the Capitals is, okay, so PLD didn't work out in one place. He didn't work out in the second place. What about 3 times and working out in Washington?
He did work out in Winnipeg. He was a monster in the playoffs, right? He was great.
He's a very good player for them.
LA was bad. LA was really bad. What made it worse, Jesse, is the history that you're referencing, right? It's how he forced his way out of Columbus. It's how he was in the draft dying to be traded to the Montreal Canadiens and thought he was, and then said, no, that didn't happen, even though we all knew it did.
Well, and now here he is living his dream playing in the red, white, and blue.
And
then they changed their jersey to the retro black one, and he gets screwed again.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
We need to all feel bad for Pierre-Luc Dubois.
We do.
What does that guy have besides $8.5 million a year?
What does he need to do this year? Because he's the biggest question mark. He has to be on this roster. We haven't mentioned Ovechkin yet and his scoring record and whatever. We'll get to that. Pierre-Luc Dubois is the biggest question in this. It could be really high upside, or this could be a boat anchor. What's he got to be in Washington?
I don't think he's going to be a boat anchor. I think the problem is when his heart isn't in it, he's not. And when he's a guy who plays with heart, he plays with violence. We saw that in Winnipeg. We saw that in the playoffs with Columbus even. That guy beat the shit out of Matthews. He beat the shit out of a few guys. He adds a little bit of depth to the middle. Strome was sort of just completely out there. And other than Ovechkin and John Carlson, like Ovechkin's going to be a huge story all year because he's chasing the goal record. There's a big locker room turnover there. They don't have Oshie, it sounds like, for the whole year. They're not going to have Backstrom anymore. There's an opportunity for him to not just be a wallflower.
Right.
He signed to a long contract. You need to be a vocal voice in that room, and you need to be a loud presence on the ice.
Right. Right. It's looking like right now he might be playing with Connor McMichael and Tom Wilson. That's a nasty line.
Of course it is. Look, go out there and play like you have Tom Wilson on your friggin' wing. Go out there and play like you like hockey. There were a lot of times where it didn't look like that was the case.
Yep, absolutely.
I get it. And for some of these guys, everyone thinks that every player in the NHL is just full of this fiery passion. It's not necessarily the case. For some guys, it's a job. But on nights where it's not a job for Pierre-Luc Dubois, he's a problem. He's a very big problem.
There's a reason he went third overall.
Yeah, I don't mean for you, Washington. I mean for everybody else.
Jesse.
Yeah.
Looking at the defense, two massive additions, Chychrun and Roy. Obviously, Rasmus Sandin the previous year. This Washington top four has really been remade in the last 18 months. What do you think of it?
Yeah, John Carlson's still underrated too, and you have TVR and Faravari. It's a solid D, and what they established last year at the end of the regular season where they were playing really good hockey and Charlie Lindgren was on his game, they're playing good team defense. They made it easy on their goaltenders to get wins, and I don't see the D taking a step back or anything. If anything, they're going to get a little better, but I see them kind of maintaining where they are, and that was enough to squeak them into the playoffs in a just really mid part of the Metro, and it's still gonna kind of be that. But I don't see a lot of flaws on the back end. I don't see a very high end defensive team, but I don't see one that's gonna struggle to stop goals. They're solid,
at least middle of the pack.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we have room for overthinking it, corner, they have the only all right catching tandem in the league. I don't know what that is going to mean for either of them, but Charlie Lindgren was so good, and Kemper just...
I don't know if that means anything.
No, it means everything. He just wasn't a good capital.
No.
And Logan Thompson, I think, is a good goalie, and he's got an axe to grind.
Well, and so this is the thing. You got a pissed off Logan Thompson, who already put up a 270 goals against average and a 908 save percentage in his career when he's played, any season that he has played in, which is the last four. He has never put up less than 908 save percentage. Last year, he played 46 games, 25, 14, and 5. This is a player that is pissed, and he's good, and he's thinking that Vegas, the way he put it was, they're going to let the defense take all the credit for all the saves I made. I think he's going to have the chance. There'll probably be a lot more shots on him in Washington.
And he can steal starts here. He
can
steal starts. Charlie Lindgren was very, very good last year. This isn't who he's been for a huge chunk of his career, right? He hasn't been this bona fide number one.
People forget he's 30, Charlie Lindgren.
Yeah,
very late.
Last year was his first year ever as a number one starter. I don't think he's ever had a game where he's appeared in a season where he's appeared in more than 34 games. I think was the last career
31.
high. 31. Yeah. There you go.
It was 50 last year,
and then 50. So Lindgren now has that experience. So it's interesting, okay, now he's at that level. He knows what to expect, but there's also a guy behind him challenging him for that spot. So it's just going to create more competition. I think it just makes both of them better.
With Washington, the main attraction for, I think, a video like this and talking about them heading into the season is the veterans. Alex Ovechkin, he needs over 40 goals to break Gretzky's record. Well, if he scores over 40 goals and he's the player who he was in the back half, they have a chance at actually making the playoffs. Pierre-Luc Dubois and the goalies they added and Chychrun and stuff like that. I think what is going to push this team over the hump if they have hopes of making the playoffs is the youth movement needs to take a step. Connor McMichael's got to get better. Marashnachenko's got to get better. Just to name a few of the guys,
Hendricks Lapierre,
and Protas. Really, you see how many? That's 4 names, right? And
they got guys.
Even Sandin, that's a 2018 draft pick. They signed him to that $4.5 million thing. He's got to grow into that deal. What's gonna get Washington to the playoffs if they make it is if all those guys pull their weight.
Well, and Spencer Carberry got them all pulling in the same direction last year. It was a Washington team that had a fight in it that I don't think we've seen in a long, long time. And I think part of what's thrown Washington off in the last few years, obviously, after their Stanley Cup win, they had a first round out in COVID, and apparently they were a little disinterested in, and I don't blame, by the way, players in that Hotel X, for being disinterested and wanting to go home. That was an ugly, ugly time to be alive. But then you get injuries, Backstrom, Oshie, things start to catch up. And if you
Wilson's missed a ton of time too.
Absolutely. And you look at this and you go, okay, last year when we were going into the season, we were calling this the Metropolitan. I don't think we can anymore. I think when you look at Ovechkin, it was like, oh my God, it's like him and who? Who's going to set him up to score?
And then he didn't score.
And then he didn't score. But then he started scoring again. And I think this year going in, I look at a guy like Ovechkin, I'm like, yeah, this is going to be okay.
Well, last year, it's like, all right, let's put him with Dylan Strome. And if that doesn't work, like every season is going to have ebbs and flows and times where it doesn't work. What do you do? Right? Adding Dubois, I think, is a huge opportunity for the both of them.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You can at least switch things up if you need to.
Now, the Washington Capitals were 4th in the division last year, 91 points. That was good enough for 8th in the conference. No surprise.
Yep.
So, Jesse and Steve, the over-under for the Caps, they had 91 points last year. The over-under is 89.5 according to BetMGM.
Ooh.
So a slight regression potentially on the books? Or is that the division is better and points are going to be harder to come by? Either way, do you have them at over and under, and where do you have them finishing in the division?
That's such a good over-under.
What number was it?
I hate when they
89.5.
Yeah, I hate when they nail it. I'm going to say over, not by much. I think it's going to be by a hair. I have them 5th. And it's not because I think they stink. I think there's going to be, 5-6 points separating like 4th from 7th in this division. It's going to be very tight.
Jesse.
We didn't talk a lot about Ovechkin. You briefly touched on it, but because he's the free square. But I think he easily passes Gretzky's record this year.
Easily.
I think he throws up just crazy. I think he's going to be on a mission. Day one, he's going to pass it easy. He had 22 goals in 35 games last year. That's February 1st onwards. Remember his slow start? He ended the year on fire. February 1st to the end of the year is on fire. I think he breaks the record. I'm going to go over and 5th.
Over and 5th.
Yeah.
All right. I'm saying over as well because I think that they are a better team than they were last year. And I think another year of Spencer Carberry and there aren't a lot of new players and you run a risk of having a slow start with a lot of new players. I actually have them 4th. I'm high on the Washington Capitals. I love what they did this year. They're tougher, they're meaner, and they can score a lot more than they could last year. Plus, the goaltending's better. You have 2 good goalies instead of 1. That is your Washington Capitals recap.
Nope.
Preview.